Hello, everyone. I am Prerna Chikersal, a third-year PhD student at the Human-Computer Interaction Institute at Carnegie Mellon University. The title of my paper is Understanding Client Support Strategies to Improve Clinical Outcomes in an Online Mental Health Intervention. This work was done in collaboration with Anja and Danielle from Microsoft Research, Gavin from Trinity College Dublin, and Anja, Jorge, and Derek from SilverCloud Health. Here is an outline of my talk. Mental illness is increasing in occurrence all over the world. It is the leading cause of disability and the strongest predictor of suicide. 1 in 4 people will have a mental health disorder at some point in their life in the UK. 1 in 8 current employees in any company report having depression. 1 in 3 college students report that depressive symptoms interfered with their ability to function in the past year. As a result, the burden of mental illness is huge. 19% of long-term sickness absences in England are attributed to mental ill health. In 2016, 42.7% employment rate was reported for people with mental health conditions, which was much lower than the 74% reported for the population at large. Overall, the total socio-economic cost of mental illness in England is estimated to be £105 billion per year. Mental health treatment is available and effective, but due to the large number of people needing treatment and the huge cost of treatment, many people are unable to access mental health services in a timely manner. So this is a huge problem and we need a solution. One solution to increasing access and reducing costs is to make available and expand online mental health services and tools. For example, therapists often use cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT to treat a wide variety of mental health disorders. CBT is fairly structured and can be administered through a computer software. Such CBT programs are called internet-based CBT or ICBT and have been found to be effective. CBT relies on the idea that our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are interconnected, and changing any one of these 3 things can change the other 2, thereby improving symptoms. SilverCloud is an online ICBT platform which has over 200,000 users in the UK alone and increasing. It's available for multiple platforms and offers ICBT programs specifically tailored to treat a wide variety of mental health disorders. SilverCloud has 3 main features: content, tools, and supporter. Let's understand these features further. First, content is defined by the space or program that is prescribed to the client by a mental health professional. One such program is called Space from Depression and Anxiety. The content for each program is similar to an online course with multiple modules that the client must work through. There are also a number of interactive tools that the client can access at any time. Here is a list of those tools. While ICBT programs are effective, they also struggle with low adherence and high attrition rates. Previous work shows that assigning a human supporter to monitor clients and give them feedback reduces attrition or dropouts and increases adherence and accountability. Hence, in SilverCloud, each client's progress on the content and their use of tools are sent to human supporters who provide tailored feedback to the clients through messages once a week. You can see what these messages look like on the bottom right corner of the screen. Additionally, the supporters are asked to follow certain guidelines. For example, they're told that they should spend not more than 10 minutes per message. They should send 1 message per week for the first 6 to 8 weeks that the client is enrolled. They should answer the client's questions and always be positive and encouraging. Basically, the job is not to provide therapy, but rather to promote the client's engagement with the platform. Additionally, clients also fill out weekly surveys that measure symptoms of depression and anxiety. I'm going to very briefly touch upon previous work. Please see the paper if you'd like more information. Previous work focuses on duration and frequency of human support. It doesn't really tell us much about how supporter behaviors impact client outcomes. Basically, there's a whole body of research on therapist-client relationships. However, not much is known about the effect of supporter behaviors on clients. The goal of our work is to generate a more nuanced understanding of supporter behaviors in order to improve supporter training and develop machine learning tools for recommending effective supporter strategies. Here is an overview of our dataset. We focused on only one SilverCloud program called the Space from Depression and Anxiety, which contained over 200,000 messages sent by roughly 3,500 supporters to around 50,000 clients. Now I'm going to go over the methods and results. We used 3 methodological approaches. I will present the methods and results of each approach before moving on to the next one. The first approach is clustering supporters. Let's talk more about this. We compute 4 outcome measures for each supporter and cluster them using k-means clustering with k equals 3. These are the 4 outcomes we used, and the reason we had to use multiple outcomes is because there is no one definition of success for a supporter. Message level change is average change in scores across all messages sent by supporter S. Message level improvement rate is percentage of messages sent by supporter S that were followed by an improvement. Certain measures, the other 2 measures, better account for client level differences. Client level change is message level change computed separately for each client and then averaged across all clients. Client level improvement rate is message level improvement rate computed separately for each client and then averaged across all clients. In this figure, we've plotted 2 out of the 4 outcome measures, and you can see how they divided supporters into clusters. So each dot represents a supporter. The green is the high success cluster, purple is the low success cluster, red is the medium success cluster, and the blue dots you see are unclustered supporters because the number of clients that they had or the number of messages they sent were too low to cluster them. So we didn't really have enough data for them to assess their success and cluster them. Moving on to the first method, which is extracting successful support strategies. We want to compare the strategies employed by the high success cluster and low success cluster across different client contexts to understand what strategies are good strategies in different client contexts or situations. For this purpose, we start by defining the following client context variables. Content views is the number of content views before the current message that is being sent. Similarly, shared is the amount of data shared with the supporter through tools and messages before the current message which is to be sent. Message number is whether the current message being sent is the first, second, third, or so on message from the supporter. Current PHQ-9 is the most recent measure of depressive symptoms for the client, while current CAD-7 is the most recent measure of symptoms of anxiety. These variables are binned or discretized based on their values to make analysis easier. We also define certain strategies which are behaviors employed by the supporters. Since supporter messages are textual messages, we operationalize them by extracting 23 variables using validated lexicons and natural language processing techniques. These 23 variables can be divided into 6 categories related to sentiment, emotion, pronouns, encouraging phrases, mental processes and behaviors, and quantity. For each context C and strategy S pair, we take messages for which clients are in context C and supporters use strategy S. We first divide the messages based on whether they came from supporters in the high success cluster or the low success cluster. Then we further divide messages in each category based on their context bin. For example, messages before which the client had 0 content views would go in bin 1, 1 to 5 content views would go in bin 2, and so on and so forth. Each message will only end up in one bin and will be from either the high outcome cluster supporter or low outcome cluster supporter. Now, to see what strategy variables were successful, we just compare the means of each strategy variable between bin 1H and bin 1L and bin 2H and bin 2L, where H refers to high outcomes and L refers to low outcomes. We found that more successful messages had used more positive and less negative words, used less words associated with negative emotions such as sadness and fear, used more first person plural pronouns like we, and had greater differences between frequencies of first person plural pronouns like we and second person pronouns like you. They also used more encouraging phrases like well done and good job. They used more words associated with social behavior like help, call, discuss, and share. They also used less words associated with abstraction like think, thought, know, understand, and learn. More successful messages were also shorter. Moving on to our final approach, which is extracting salient context-specific support strategies. In reality, the relation between client context, supporter behavior, and client outcomes is far more complex. For example, client context can also be multidimensional. You can have a client with zero content views who has severe depression, and you can also have a client with zero content views and mild depression, where content views and severity of depression are the two contexts that are together that are multidimensional in nature. By considering multidimensional context, the question we're trying to answer is, how may considering the combination of multiple context variables shift how salient a specific support strategy is? While our previous findings reveal strategies that are good generally and have implications for supporter training, this question is particularly interesting for personalization. We use a priori algorithm to do this. Please refer to the paper for methodological details as I'm not going to cover them here. Here's what we found. On the y-axis are strategies, and on the x-axis are multidimensional contexts. A pink cell implies that the strategy Y is most used in less successful messages given a client in X context. A green cell implies that the strategy Y is most used by more successful messages given a client in X context, where X context is multidimensional in nature. Darker colors imply greater salience or greater difference between less and more successful clusters. Next, I'll give you one example of what this graph reveals. Here you can see the colors of a strategy, which is total number of words is equal to low, which is shorter messages, where writing shorter messages is the strategy. You can see this flip across client contexts. For example, previously we found that shorter messages were more successful. Here also we see that that is true, but not always. When the client has very low content views, content sharing, or just engagement in general, we see that shorter messages are sent by the less successful cluster. Whereas when the client engages with the platform, shorter messages are sent by the more successful cluster. Here is a summary of what this approach reveals. For less engaged clients, writing longer, more positive, and more supportive messages is linked with greater outcomes, whereas more engaged clients appear to benefit more from messages with less negative words, less abstraction, and more references to social behavior. Moving on to the discussion. Our work enables personalization using machine learning while maintaining the human touch and enhancing supporter agency. Based on the literature, we understand that genuine human connection is important for a stronger supporter-client working alliance. Hence, our work creates opportunities to empower supporters by generating insights that result in better training for them, or by enabling data-driven tools that recommend strategies to supporters. For example, the supporter may see something like this while typing the message to the client. Or we may build supporter in the loop interventions such that instead of sending the intervention directly to the client, the intervention is first sent to the supporter, feedback from the supporter is incorporated, and then the intervention is sent to the client. Such supporter in the loop interventions may be an ethically safer alternative to mental health interventions. With this, I've come to the end of my presentation. Thank you. Please feel free to email me your questions. Thanks.